In this video, we're going to be creating a promotional graphic for this lesson, essentially. And so if you are perusing the membership, you'll be able to see that we did videos about Illustrator and Canva, Photoshop, and now we are going to be creating something in InDesign. And if you haven't checked out the mood board video, I would look into that if it interests you. If not, I just want to give you context and let you know that we're going to be using that mood board that we created as in basically bringing inspiration into the piece that we're going to be creating now. Each design program that I've created a graphic in will be different, but still based on the same mood board, which I think is interesting, and it's always amazing to see how different things come about, especially depending on the program that you're using. There's a lot of different limitations and flexibility that exist within each program, and so I think it lends itself to different design just based on what they're good at. So InDesign is predominantly used to create layouts for books or magazines, anything that has spreads or multiple pages. The great thing about InDesign, if you are creating a document that has a lot of content, text especially, you can assign paragraph styles and get into a really good flow of like how headings are used and paragraph text and things like that. We won't necessarily be using that in this video or this tutorial, but that is a great perk if you're using InDesign. So we're going to create our new document, and I'm going to just make it a letter size. Over here you can see that it's defaulting to picas as the units, and I'm going to change it to inches. And you can see that it's 8.5 by 11. We're just going to go with the basic printer size paper. Just one page. If you watched my Illustrator video, you would have noticed that I chose CMYK for print, which is basically the color profile that the file is going to call on. With InDesign, because it's really great for print design like books and magazines, we really don't have to do that. And I'm going to just leave everything else pretty much basic. I'm going to leave the bleeds and margins the way they are and create the file. So now that we have our file created, we can see that we're basically just seeing the artboard, or the area in which we're creating the actual piece. And just like Illustrator and a lot of the other Adobe programs, I can actually go and load in one of my workspaces. So I'm going to choose Essentials. And that's just going to load all of my different panels and modules so that I can quickly work and access things like the selection tool, the rectangle tool, and everything like that. When I start a file, I automatically save it. I used to not be great at doing this, but after losing a lot of files, I don't necessarily want to deal with that again. So I'm going to just call this Diamond Membership. I think I misspelled that. Yep. Oh well, we'll fix it later. And then down here, I always just make sure that my fill and my stroke settings right here are switched. So I always want the fill to be calling upon a color. Right now it's just black, just as a starting point. So I'm going to load in our mood board. So I'm going to place, file, place, and then I'm going to choose my mood board, which is over here. So I'm going to open it, and it's going to ask me where I want to drop it. I'm going to just drop it over here. It's going to be pretty big, so I'm going to zoom out, which on a Mac is Command minus or plus if you want to zoom in. And I just make sure that it's a little bit smaller than my artboard so I can see it while I'm working. The great thing about InDesign, one of my favorite things, is, again, if you want to view this, is this what it's doing? No. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. So the great thing about it is if you want to just view only the area in which you're designing, you can click W as a shortcode, and it gets rid of all of the extra stuff that's sitting around in your artboard that you don't, or off of your artboard that you don't want to see. And so I'm going to just toggle W gets me those views. And right now I want to see my mood board. If having your area off of your artboard, if it being white is distracting, you can go into Preferences, Interface, and you can kind of play around with the different colors actually of your whole theme. I'm actually going to leave it the way it is, but there's a ton of different ways in which you can work overall, they all feel a little similar between Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator, but those little things can make a difference. So what we're going to do is, just like in any design file or any design graphic, I'm going to just start typing out the text in which is going to be present on the actual design. So learn how to design will be the thing that I start with. I won't constantly be referencing back and forth between the other programs, but I do want to let you know that with InDesign, it is usually smart to highlight the entire text that you're going to be altering, whether it is changing the size or the color and things like that. It just tends to come a little more naturally like that, and you won't be forced to, like if I take this entire block, if I want to change the color of this text and all I do is change, and all I do is select it, it's going to fill in the entire box versus the text. So I'm going to undo that. And what I'm going to do is choose a color that's predominantly represented on my mood board. So I'm going to let's take this purpley pink color in the bottom middle column, or the bottom middle graphic. And as you can see here in this mood board, there's a lot of sans serif fonts being used, which tend to look a little bit more modern versus this font that's being used right here on my artboard, which is Minion Pro. So I'm going to open up my character panel, which if you can't find certain panels, you can find it usually under Window and then choose the one that you're looking for. So if you were looking for layers, effects, color, things like that, you can choose directly from this window option. A lot of them end up just being here, sort of like a shortcut to clicking into those modules. So I'm going to choose a font that feels pretty modern, a little bit more bold. You can see that not all of these are super thin. And let's try this one. So this one feels a little softer. You can see that the ends of the letters are a little bit more rounded, whereas a lot of the things on our artboard are more, have a little bit more of like a straight line to them or a hard edge. And so I'm going to keep clicking around. I actually really like this one. But what I'm going to do is make it all caps. And so you can hide options or make, be able to see all of the options here. But if I go into this little hamburger menu in my character module, I'll be able to click all caps. So I like this font. It feels a lot like that National Theater poster or this one right here. And so I'm going to stack these. And this color specifically comes off a lot more muted than I would want. So I'm going to highlight the text again, and I'm going to choose something a little bit brighter. Let's go with this green color, greenish yellow. And I'm going to center up the text. If I want to, I can go ahead and just make sure that this is completely centered, just bringing it out, bringing my actual text box out to where I want it to be. And I'm going to place this up at the top. So you can also see that in a lot of different instances, there are strips of color, whether it's more geometric or organic, splitting through a lot of these elements. So I'm going to try to implement some of that into this graphic just so that we get a sense of if it fits in this instance or not. And I'm going to go more diagonal with it. So you even see it over here with the 2016, something splitting more diagonally through the one, as well as this pin right here with the pink. And so in order to do that, you're going to choose the pen tool. And I'm actually going to choose this same almost lighter off-white with a hint of that greenish yellow color in the same pin that I had before. And I'm going to take this off of the artboard just to make sure that I actually get it to bleed off of the edge. And I'm going to take it just diagonally down with no real rhyme or reason because we can adjust those different points as we go. And I'm holding shift just to make sure that I'm getting a straight line. And then I'm going to connect to the dot where I first started. And so like in every program, if you apply a new element, it's going to just, it's going to end up being on top of anything that you currently have. And so if you just go to Object, arrange, you can send to back or use the shortcode or shortcut on your actual keyboard. And so this is where that toggle of, you know, getting rid of anything that's going off of the artboard I think is really handy, because by just clicking W, I can see how it's coming off. And I actually really like the way this looks. I'm going to change the color. You can see that it just comes off. It just feels a lot darker when it's this much of this background color versus how small this different snippet of this pin is. So I'm going to try this color, which again still seems almost too dark. Again, feels too dark. So I'm going to actually go to this gray. And as you can see, that's a lot lighter. It's a little bit more fresh. It doesn't feel like it's taking away too much from that text. And we're going to start thinking through other elements that we want to incorporate into this InDesign file. So, you know, we have, this is centered up with text underneath. You know, I'm going to get a little bit closer just so I can see it. This pin up here, the top left, is just very bold. I love how bold it is. It really isn't getting too complicated. Here we're using a little bit of a quote mark, which I think is really nice. And so I think what I'm going to do is we're going to take a different approach in just the copywriting. So learn to design like a pro. And I'm actually going to create a new text box over here with a quote mark. We're really far away, so you can't really see, quotation mark, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to take on the style of this and take a look at what that quotation mark actually looks like. I want something that feels a little bit more organic, like the one, a little less geometric. So I'm going to just click around and figure out which type of font I want to convert that to. Try this one. A little thicker. The nice thing about Illustrator in the video that I just showed you is as you browse through and kind of hover over these fonts, you actually see it change. And here you're not seeing that. So, you know, there's a little bit less experimentation happening while you're thinking through the different fonts. And you can see these just look more like 2 forward slashes, which is not what I want. So I'm going to keep looking, and actually I kind of like that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this about 3 times as big, and we're going to center it right over the text right here. And what I like about this is when you hand choose these elements manually, you know, it doesn't look, no one would look at this and think that that quotation mark doesn't come from the font that we're using with the copy. You know, the thickness still feels pretty appropriate. And so you can get a little bit more custom without only using one font. So I'm going to leave this like that. And what I'm going to do is include some of those details that you would naturally want on a promotional graphic like this. So again, I'm going to take another text box and write using InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, and Canva. And I really actually want to continue using the same typeface. And so I'm going to just highlight this. Might as well just use the eyedropper tool to take on that same style, but I want it to be a different color. I think I want it to be black. And so if we select this entire text box, I'm going to bring the font size down and continue to stack everything. And then it just really disappears once you go outside of that text box size. So you just have to drag that over. And I'm going to move everything up again. Again, I'm always toggling W just so I can see where I am. You kind of lose a little bit of that once you're seeing everything that's on and off the artboard. So here's what it's looked like. Here's what it looks like so far. And as I design, I'm just getting new ideas. So actually what I want to try is bringing this over aligned right and bring it right up into the middle, and then maybe shift it over a tiny bit. And then the same goes for this new text box where we describe, you know, more details. And I'm going to align it so that they're facing each other, but that straight edge is basically, they're mirroring each other on their straight edge. And then you get a little bit, you can get even more interesting. You can decide, okay, I don't want it to be perfectly aligned that way. I really want it to feel more balanced. And I want these quotation marks to come and align really on top of that. Learn how to design like a pro. And when you zoom out this way and you're not working so closely and zoomed in, you can really get a sense of the flow of everything and what feels too squished, or if you have enough margin space happening, which I really love to do. And then again, toggle W just so you can get a sense of what's happening over here. If it's starting to feel like it's losing a lot of that overall style or essence from you, deciding if it's the font, if they're colors. I think the color scheme right now doesn't feel very bold or interesting, so this is where I start playing around with the different color. One of my pet peeves about InDesign is that I just took the eyedropper tool and picked that blue color. Well, I have to click it again if I want to choose a different color. So here we're gonna, you know, I always say color can completely change the way something feels, so I'm going to mimic that red on pink. And here I think you're starting to get a completely different, warmer, you know, they're not really warm toned reds or pinks, but it does very much change how it feels. I think that the way this pink, this background color is coming off feels a lot too dark. So I'm going to pull it up a little bit and so that it's a little bit lighter. To me, that's a little too beige. And here we're getting more about what I was envisioning. And then again, as I start working through this design and it evolves, I don't really like this quotation mark. So I'm going to look around for a different one. Oh, that's cool. I like this one. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So instead of going up and down with the arrows to make the size smaller, I can just type in something that I know is about the same size that I'm looking for. And at this point, you probably, you know, if this is, again, a real class, I might want to bring this up more because what I would want to do is say when it is. So Saturday, we'll just say April 16th from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. You want a little bit more information. Make sure that they know exactly what to expect. All those details, and you can start adding as much or as little information as you want. So if this is something that's going on Facebook or Instagram, you can start thinking through how much detail do you really want to include, and how much can be listed in the caption. So I'm going to level this up. If you ever want to make sure that things are leveled, but you can't necessarily align them, because if I were to align both of these, they would just align from the top. You can pull and drag out this ruler and get a sense of if things are aligned correctly, which they are. You know, you can click undo if you want, or just click the R button on your keyboard, or Command R will bring the ruler in and out. And then I'm going to just choose some different elements. Like I really like this red rectangle that's separating things, that just makes things feel a little bit more designed and not just text on a background. If you're interested in creating a lot more shape and interesting vector elements that give you a lot more illustrative freedom, then I would definitely try to get comfortable in Adobe Illustrator. Within InDesign, you would probably want to bring a lot of those elements into your InDesign file, but not necessarily make them. So that's why a lot of the things that I make in InDesign are very much you're bringing in a lot of linked elements into your file versus creating them here within InDesign. So a lot of my InDesign files are very text heavy, focusing in on fonts. And so if I was making 60 of these, I would be able to, within my Pages panel, duplicate this. So I can duplicate the spread, and then another one appears just like that. In other programs, Photoshop, that's a little difficult. In Illustrator, you would just copy the artboard, but this is a really great way to be able to quickly duplicate a spread. What you also can do is if this background element that's pink is something that you want to appear on every page the exact same way, you can double click into your master, which is basically like the master slide in PowerPoint or Keynote. And I can place this in just like that. You can't really see the other edge right now, but just like that. And then if you were to create a new spread after this page, so insert pages, we're going to insert 2 pages after page 1. It's going to automatically appear here where it is in my master slide, and I can't move it. And this is a really great way to just make sure that from page to page, things aren't shifting and moving. But because we're just creating a graphic in here, all I have is 1 page, and this works really well. So this is what I come up with. It feels very much more heavily influenced by these first 2 pins that we have, and very bold sans serif font. It feels pretty modern, but it's sticking to about 2 to 3 colors, which if you're getting things printed is a whole other thing to think through. Just making sure that you don't have too many colors, and that can really increase the price. But what I would do from here is I would leave the InDesign file as is. I definitely recommend to save things as a IDML file, which can be opened by a lot of other InDesign versions. And I'm going to fix my spelling error here. A lot of times, if I'm not sure if I have the same InDesign version as someone else, the IDML file is the best bet. You can also export. That's how you're going to get a PDF or a JPEG or a PNG. I'm going to save it as a PDF right now. And then again as a JPEG. Here you can choose which pages you want. High quality, low quality, medium quality. And I'm going to click Save. And so if I go to my desktop where I shared those things, you can see here's my graphic. Again, here as a PDF. And then my IDML file will not be viewable, but again, it will save a lot of headache if someone's trying to open it. The other thing about InDesign, it wouldn't be as necessary here because we aren't using a lot of imagery, but I would suggest 2 things. If you're sharing the file to someone else who wants to be able to open it up, load all of the pictures and fonts that you have, you would go into File, Package, and I'm going to call this Diamond Membership. And you just want all of these check boxes checked, and it's going to create a folder that contains all of the pictures, all of the fonts, everything that's basically getting pulled in, so that when someone else opens it, and here it is the folder, when someone else opens it, they can load all of these fonts, and it's going to be just pulling from that folder so that they don't get broken links, essentially. So it's a really great way if you're going to be collaborating with someone. If you're just dealing with the graphics yourself and you're just working on the designs, then that doesn't matter as much. But it's really helpful and causes way less headaches when you give someone everything that they need. So hopefully that was helpful. Check out the other videos if you want to just see different styles or see if maybe that design program is for you. And I'll see you in the next one.